Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our Wednesday Wisdom this morning. I hope that you have had a good night's rest and you're getting ready for school and to work, but I appreciate just a few minutes of your time. This is episode 11 of our Wednesday Wisdom. This is our last one for the month of March. We've been looking at some emotions and some things that the proverb writer has to say. We've looked at anger and bitterness, despair, and other types of emotions. And this morning, I wanted to talk about the one thing that ties them all together, that helps us maintain our anger and keeps it from spreading, that helps us keep our bitterness at bay and affecting so much. And that is just this concept of self-control. Solomon says this in Proverbs 25 and verse 28. A man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. It's one of my favorite verses, and at least from the version that I read, the English Standard Version, it's the only reference to self-control in the Old Testament. Now, there are a lot of synonyms for self-control. You'll see the word restraint, you'll see the word discipline, the word discernment is used on occasion. Instruction. All of those are aids to help with self-control. But look at the picture that Solomon paints for us concerning self-control. That a man without it, a man with no restraint of his soul, a man who has no restraint of himself when it comes to anything, is like a city that has, one, been broken into, and two, been left without walls. And those images are important. I know in our day and age, we don't really look at it from that perspective. We don't understand the importance of walls to the security of a city. As a matter of fact, today, the walls that provide security for our cities are not brick and mortar. They're actually men and women in uniform who patrol the streets and do so much to ensure our safety. And not just of our cities. That the men and women of our military, they are in essence our walls that protect our interest. But in the ancient days, in Solomon's day, in David's day, the walls were the best line of defense, and they were the first line of defense for a city. A city could not function without those walls because it was just open to attack from all angles. And Solomon says that that's what self-control is to a man, to a person. That if we are busy developing it, if we allow the Spirit of God within us to produce it, because it is a fruit of the Spirit, Galatians 5, then it will be a protective measure for our hearts. It'll be a protective measure for our minds. And look at this image. If you do have that self-control, like a wall, it won't just protect you from all kinds of harm, but it'll protect you from something coming in and stealing from you. Because that's the other image that Solomon says, that a person without self-control is like a city broken into. You only break into things to steal things. And you only break into things to take away from someone else. And of course, we know that Scripture points out that there's a thief among us, and his entire goal is to come in and to steal and kill and rob and to destroy. And that is what Jesus says in John 10, that this person jumps the walls. He crosses those walls so that he can come in and create harm and hurt to us. Think about what self-control does in terms of the protection and the preservation of our hearts and our minds, but all the things that are valuable to us. For instance, if we practice self-control with the money that God sends our way so that we can be good stewards, how much financial pressure is alleviated? If we practice self-control when it comes to our anger, how many relationships are not destroyed? If we practice self-control when it comes to bitterness, think about the joy that remains unaffected, and instead of being stolen, it can grow and grow and grow. Think of all the things that make up who we are, and that if we're willing to practice that self-control, it can protect us, It can keep us safe. It can keep who we value the most, what we value the most, safe from harm. But maybe you're wondering, like I did, how do you grow the self-control? What empowers self-control so that I can, when I'm faced with these things, can practice it? It's something I was reminded of Sunday night with our lesson as we were going over the great men and women of Hebrews 11, that great hall of fame of faith, and men and women who lived by faith, who are the very definition of those who walked by faith and not by sight. And the New Testament links self-control and faith together. You're not going to have one without the other. And both are mutual. Both are dependent on each other. As a matter of fact, the Apostle Peter tells us that we should add self-control to our faith to make our faith stronger. But how does self-control grow in terms of that faith? Well, quite simply, I was reminded Sunday night that faith constantly reminds us of the big picture. It constantly reminds us that there is something better, that we as believers are those who rely on the promises of God, who trust in those promises, and we're willing to live by those things. Even if we can't see them, we have the conviction and the assurance that they are there and that they are reality, and that they may not become a reality in this life, but they will become a reality in the next. So until then, I can practice self-control, and that's exactly what those men and women in Hebrews 11 did. Whether it's Abraham, whether it's Moses, whether it's Rahab, whether it's others, it doesn't matter. That to a certain extent, they practiced self-control. Now, they weren't perfect, and they had their shortcomings. They fell short several times in their life, which is why we will fall short. And that is also why we rely on the forgiveness and the grace of God, so that when we do fall short, that He cleanses us in the blood of Christ. We continue to walk in that light. And we continue to pick ourselves up and to move forward and learn, just like Abraham did when he fell short, just like David did when he fell short, just like Sarah, Moses, and all the other individuals that did that. Faith reminds us of the big picture. Faith reminds us of something that's better, that's coming down the line. So no matter what the enemy puts in front of me, no matter how much he tempts me to lose control in whatever situation it is, faith reminds me that there's a bigger picture. And so I can deny myself. I can deny what is temporary. I can refuse it. I can practice that restraint so that I don't lose what's coming down the line. God's promises are big. God's promises are great. And sometimes they'll come in fruition in this life, and sometimes they won't. But if we will practice self-control, if we will put ourselves in a position to where we will protect our hearts, our minds, our relationships, and all the other things that we hold value, and continue to keep, by faith, the big picture in mind, then we will not be the city without walls. We will not be the city that is broken into. Instead, we will be the city that God has deemed safe. We will be the individual whose life, whose heart, whose mind is guarded by the very peace and strength and joy of God. So let me encourage you that in whatever happens today, whatever is going to come your way that will tempt you to lose control in any aspect of your life, let me encourage you to keep, by faith, the big picture in mind. To not become the man or the woman who is a city broken into and left without walls. But instead, you practice that self-control, that self-restraint, keeping that big picture in mind, knowing that God has better things planned. And so you can resist the thief that comes in only to rob, kill, and to seek to destroy the things that you have. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for the 11th episode of our Wednesday Wisdom. I hope that everyone has a great day and a safe day, and most importantly, a blessed day. Bye-bye.